you. I'm Mark Hall. There was a second assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. It happened September 15th while Trump was golfing near his Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach. Documents revealed the suspect camped outside of the course for nearly 12 hours before being stopped by a Secret Service agent. The FBI and the Secret Service continue to investigate. Meanwhile, concern continues to grow and more questions continue on what can be done to better protect the former president and others moving forward. Maryland Congressman Glen Ivey is a member of the bipartisan congressional committee investigating the first assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Congressman, welcome back to Capitol Review.
Thanks for having me.
Congressman, what is your reaction to the second attempt, and does this have an impact on your investigation?
It does. In fact, the House has just decided to expand the jurisdiction of the task force to include not just Butler, but now Florida. So we're going to look at both of those together, which makes sense because there is some significant overlap, especially with respect to the involvement of the Secret Service. But I think that that's a good step in the right direction. The committee's been working, or the task force has been working in a nonpartisan way, and I think that's good and makes it more effective and more efficient. The members are working well together, the staff is too. And so we've already started going through the documents for the Butler part of it. We'll move on to the Florida piece of that as well and move forward with both at the same time.
Congressman, I know the work of the task force continues to move forward, but what more can be done to protect our leaders and our candidates?
Well, I think there's a couple of things we need to take a look at, and some have already been put in place. First, the president decided to raise the level of protection that was being provided to former President Trump and Vice President Harris. It's almost at the level of the president himself, and I think there's a vote that just took place here on the Hill to make sure that there are the resources to do that. In fact, to elevate it to the same level of protection the president's getting. And I think that makes sense. But secondly, we need some immediate steps to happen too, because giving them more resources is great, but they don't have enough time to hire new Secret Service agents and train them up at the same time. So part of this will be an expanded use of technology like drones, for example. I think we can increase the use of those. There's an expense that comes with that. I think we're going to make sure we cover that too, so that the additional protection can be there. There's also going to be an expanded use of law enforcement at the state and local levels. Now, there are jurisdictions like, for example, New York City or Washington, D.C., where you have state and local law enforcement that have the type of training and expertise that the Secret Service needs for these protection details. And so I think we can ramp that up immediately in a way that makes sense. There's going to be challenges in other places. Sometimes the protectees are going to want to go to jurisdictions where that might strain those resources a bit because state and local don't have the same amount of expertise to bring, but we'll be able to work through that, I think. And finally, on that front, I think it's important to ask some of the protectees to maybe make different choices and pick sites that are easier to protect. A golf course is a very difficult site to protect. I know every candidate deserves R&R, but maybe we need the protectees to pick different ways to go about that in the near future. The Butler site was another example. As soon as we got there, I looked around and I saw there's way too many rooftops for a venue to be selected for this kind of activity. Why don't we pick one like the nearby fairgrounds that didn't have those kinds of elevated positions where a shooter might be able to position himself.
And Congressman, quickly, you talked about challenges. There's talk about the importance of lowering the tone of the political rhetoric. Can this help, and is it really the responsibility of the candidates and our political leaders to tone down the rhetoric?
I certainly think that would help. I got to say, though, that some of the comments that were made immediately after this, frankly, by former President Trump, are pushing things in the wrong direction and continue to do so. And that's not just with respect to blaming this incident on Biden and Harris, which, of course, there's absolutely no factual basis to support that suggestion. But there's other types of rhetoric, too, like this sort of falsely claiming that Haitian immigrants are eating dogs and cats. I just don't see how that's helpful. It's creating a new set of issues where those people are now being targeted for harassment and potentially even more severe conduct. And, you know, the local officials, including Republicans in Ohio, are asking people to tone it down. I join with that, and I hope my Republican colleagues will as well.
Congressman Glen Ivey, thank you very much for joining us.